Hot takes are everywhere, but they're often uninformed, and major news is biased. We've had enough of hot takes. We want informed takes. Join Kevin Briggins and Devin Smith as they have rational conversations about domestic politics, geopolitics, and military affairs. Things will get interesting as they bring in expert guests, even from across the aisle. Grab your favorite drink, get comfortable, and hop into the chat. It's time for Informed Takes.
Yo, welcome everybody to Informed Takes. We're glad you guys are back. I am Kevin Briggins. He is Devin Smith, and we are glad that you guys are with us again. Man, it's been a week. It has been a week.
Yeah, man. Yeah, I think in many ways, we're gonna talk about tariff stuff tonight, but it also been some drama in these YouTube streets. I don't know how many of y'all follow Kev, but Kev been having to throw some hands this week on some stuff.
Yeah, man, it's just been crazy. I would call it the evangelical YouTube streets, right? Yeah, it's just been unnecessary stuff, man. Stuff I don't even want to. I hate we even have to deal with or talk about or engage with. It's so unnecessary. But sometimes these things pop up for good reasons, and it's something that we got to work through and work out because we got some issues, and so it just needs to be addressed. And so I hated it came up, but to me, it's like, okay, if this comes up, it's because there's clearly an issue. I know we're not going to get into it. There's clearly an issue that kind of came to the surface this week. And it's just something we got to address. It'll be all right, though. We'll be good.
Yeah. For those who don't know what we're talking about, just some issues, coming up with regards to Black identitarianism in the church. So not really on topic for our show, but if you want to see Kevin's comments on that, be sure to check out Off Code. They did a special live stream last night, and it's a whole saga. It's a whole saga, but we have some more political issues to talk about tonight.
Yes,
what are we talking about tonight, my man?
Yeah. So when I said a couple of weeks ago, we was going to start talking bad about the Trump administration, I did not know it was going to be. I didn't know we was going to be handed things on the silver platter. Like, hey, here's something. You got to talk about this, right?
Yeah.
And it's not favorable. And so this week you've seen a lot of what I would call conservative, YouTubers, media, kind of calling out Trump on some of this stuff. Ben Shapiro did a whole episode on it. And we were going to react to it, but I decided to change out the video. But even in his video, he just breaking it down as a businessman. Like, I'm a businessman. And what you need is you need stability. You need certainty. How are you going to make moves? You don't know what the trade deals are going to be, what the tariffs are going to be. How do you sign these agreements? And he's just talking about the current state of stability and uncertainty is a negative. And that's why you're seeing this reaction right now. But we just got to talk about all this stuff that's going on and just kind of, is this a good thing or not?
Right. Yeah. I think that as a businessman, at first I was like, all right, I see he's trying to do some things, he's trying to change some things. But my opinion of the methods generally, I consider myself, straight up free market, free market capitalist.
You have a strong disdain for what you view as protectionism.
Yes. and I got what did Jared's dad say in Seinfeld about during Festivus? I got a lot of problems with you people, and now you're going to hear about them. No, I'm not going to go that hard in the paint, but I think I have well-founded concerns about this particular direction. But I will not jump ahead. I will not put the cart before the horse, man. So take it away, man.
Yeah. So if you guys weren't paying attention, Trump announced what he called Liberation Day. And, Liberation Day was the start of his tariffs that he was implementing. And the stock market has reacted to that. And it wasn't good, which we expected. You expected that. The market does not react well to, number one, change, but number two, uncertainty. People with money don't invest. They don't know what they're investing in. And so you had 2 major days of the stock market just going down. I think yesterday or Friday was like 2,000 points. And so this is getting a negative, backlash and response, which it should. The question is this a short-term pain for a long-term gain? Because that is kind of what the Trump administration is selling. But you're going to have to, that turnaround happen real quick, or that rebound. People aren't going to deal with this for too long of a time, right? So, so let's jump into it. Let's get into these first videos, because I will let everyone know we have a lot to react to tonight. This is going to be a heavy show of us reacting to the themes, because neither one of us are experts on the economy and trade. And so we're going to lean a lot on kind of some news reports, and we're just going to kind of react to them, because I just want to make sure that when you leave this episode, I want you to feel like you are educated on the issue, right? And not just us ranting about protectionism, or I should say Devin ranting about protectionism. Let's jump into that first video. Oh, we starting with Reagan. Okay. Hey, Devin, you're muted.
Hold on a second. I need to get my here we go. Boom. Okay. So we do have some stuff to get into before we get into that Reagan video.
President Donald Trump has unveiled a sweeping new tariff policy targeting most U.S. trading partners. The plan will set at least a 10% tariff on nearly every country in the world. Some countries will be hit harder than others. President Trump and the White House shared a series of charts on social media showing the tariff rates they say other countries impose on the U.S. and how the U.S. will reciprocate.
How did they get to those tariff rates? I think that when we figured out that was a little puzzling, because what we have confirmed now is the way they got to those rates. There's the formula. It looks kind of complicated, but it's actually rather simple. They took the trade deficit, the administration took the trade deficit and divided it by the imports from that country to the United States, and then assumed that number, that rate that they got, was all the ways that they're ripping us off, whether it's currencies or taxes or tariffs.
To a lot of trade experts, Kelly, it's gibberish. That's really the problem. And I called up these trade experts and I said, have you ever heard of this? And they said, no. Do you know anybody who's ever used this formula to determine the trade burden or onus or whatever? And everybody said no.
A White House official told reporters on April 2nd, these tariffs are customized to each country, and the numbers have been calculated by the Council of Economic Advisors using very, very well-established methodologies from the international trade economic literature as well as policy practice. The model they use is based on the concept that the trade deficit that we have with any given country is the sum of all the unfair trade practices, the sum of all cheating.
We were all trying to figure out, is this based on value-added taxes? Is this tariffs? It doesn't line up with any known applied trade policies. It took people who weren't actually steeped in this day to day to say, hey, this is just correlated with trade balances. The White House is naming all of these policies they're supposedly reciprocating against. Those show up in no form or fashion in that formula at all. It's simply just looking at bilateral trade balances in goods, which has nothing to do overall with trade policy.
The administration calculated each country's tariff rate using this formula. The tariff rate equals the U.S. trade deficit with that country divided by the U.S. imports from that country. For example, the U.S. claims that China charges a tariff of 67%. The U.S. ran a goods trade deficit of $295.4 billion with China in 2024, while imported goods were worth $438.9 billion. When you divide $295.4 billion by $438.9 billion, the result is 67%, just like the graphic the administration posted.
Chronic trade deficits are no longer merely an economic problem. They're a national emergency that threatens our security and our very way of life. It's a very great threat to our country. For nations that treat us badly, we will calculate the combined rate of all their tariffs, non-monetary barriers, and other forms of cheating, but we will charge them approximately half of what they are and have been charging us.
The idea was essentially that any type of trade deficit that the U.S. economy would have with any trading partner would be perceived as essentially an unfair advantage that the U.S. would be given to another economy. And that's why they use the trade deficit relative to imports from that economy as the basis for these reciprocal tariffs. When you're just focused on trade deficits vis-a-vis trading partners, and you're trying to bring these trade deficits down to zero, you're essentially starting a trade conflict that is very similar to what we call as economists a beggar thy neighbor type of policy, because every other economy is going to want to react in the same fashion and thus impose its own tariffs. And so what that leads to is an environment where the general cost of doing trade globally increases, inflation dynamics are reignited, and that leads to demand destruction globally. So we end up in a world that experiences higher inflation and lower growth. And that type of policy is detrimental to U.S. economic activity, but also global economic activity.
President Trump has made it clear his goal is to bring manufacturing back to the U.S., but that could be a slow process.
This is just the latest episode in a years-long era of supply chain volatility that we have seen drive major firms to already shorten and diversify supply chains to the United States. We expect the tariffs to continue accelerating that trend. That being said, this uncertainty in trade policy, along with other areas, is driving a lot of other major corporates to pause investment decisions, pause leasing decisions, because of the uncertainty involved.
Economists warn that a trade war could have serious implications for the U.S. and the global economy.
The tariffs will create a tax burden on the U.S. economy, and it will be shared by workers and by business owners. Some companies may be able to pass their tariff costs on to retail prices. Others won't. They'll have to eat that cost. It reduces their revenues, their profits, which means they might have to cut hiring. They might have to cut returns to shareholders. So in either way, whether the cost is passed forward or passed backward, it's American workers and American business owners who bear that burden.
We're now going back to an era where essentially each country would be forced, in a sense, to produce more domestically, even if that leads to heightened inefficiencies and a higher cost of trade globally.
Yeah. And knowing is half the battle. Man. So I got my thoughts, but I know you are dying to jump in. So why don't you go ahead and just let it out.
All right, man. So here's my thing, man. The struggle that I have with all this is that okay, so it's evident now, that these are not just reciprocal tariffs. They're not just reciprocal tariffs. It is this crazy formula that they've decided to come up with based on this concept that Trump has that we're being screwed on trade. And I think that in some instances, there's some merit to what he is saying. There are some countries that have high tariffs on our goods, and we don't tariff their goods quite as much, China being an example. And I do think that it is, it's not necessarily a bad idea, which is why you'll go back to another episode that we had, and you'll hear me say, let the man cook, because I thought that we were going to implement tariffs that were going to reflect how we were being tariffed. And if that's what you're doing, I don't have that much of a problem with it, because I think that those countries should drop their tariffs. And that's what I expect them to do in response to a reciprocal tariff. But that's not what this is. It's not what this is. And the problem that I have is that I wanted to give him the benefit of the doubt, because I've heard his rhetoric. I've heard his rhetoric around this before. I've heard him talk about trade deficits and all that stuff. And the reality is, you can't expect to have trade parity with a country whose economy is a fraction of our economy. They don't have the buying power. How on earth do you expect their imports to match the exports, or to come anywhere close to the amount that we buy from them, when they straight up, their economy, their GDP just is not high enough for them to be an equal trading partner, or approaching anywhere close to equal? And so I wanted to believe that there was more intelligence behind this policy, but the actual policy in practice, I'm sorry, this is exactly the stuff that I opposed him on during his first term when he would talk about trade, and during his second term. He was worse about it in the first term. As a matter of fact, it was pointed out, and I think this is absolutely right, that during his first run for president, I shouldn't say his first term, his first run for president, because he didn't get to do any of this stuff in his first term. He wanted to, but he didn't get to. In his first run, he talked about trade deficits. And the way that he talked about this stuff in very protectionist fashion was almost indistinguishable from Bernie Sanders. It was almost indistinguishable. And that was one of the major critiques that a lot of conservatives had, is like, you sound like Bernie on trade. And that's a problem, because Bernie has no idea what he's talking about when it comes to economics. And you look at human history, and it is undeniable that free trade has lifted more nations out of poverty than anything else. So this idea that we are going to start playing protectionist games and we're not going to get a negative reaction from this is crazy. We have a global supply chain now. We have a global supply chain. You can't just flip the switch and that change all of a sudden. We source goods for all kinds of things that we use in our daily lives from all over the place. I am not against, though, I'm not against us making more things here. One of the problems that we have in America is we don't make enough stuff anymore. We went too hard in the paint on everybody having desk jobs and not enough people knowing how to make things. And so one of the problems that I do have with our economy is that it is too heavily dependent on other countries for certain essential goods, when we could actually make those things here. So I do think that's a problem. And I agree with Trump that we need to fix that. We do need to fix that. I agree with Mike Rowe. Mike Rowe taught, from the show Dirty Jobs. Mike Rowe has made, essentially like an entire second career out of pushing this issue that we need to be able to make things here. The trades need to be a path for people. Everybody doesn't need to go to college. Everybody doesn't need to have a desk job. One of the things that Obama did, he tried to talk to Apple about making the iPhone in the United States. And here was a response that he got from Tim Cook. Tim Cook said, we couldn't, even if we wanted to. We couldn't do it because not enough people in the United States have the hard skills necessary to make iPhones. Love it or hate it, and I think we should hate it, the Chinese do train their school students on how to have skills making things with their hands, and we don't do that anymore. It's for decades, it was looked down upon in this country to have a job where you make things with your hands. I think that's turning around somewhat, but still, and especially among a lot of minorities, it's looked at as not reaching your potential. Going and getting a college degree and having, a job in one of the professions is seen as making it, as opposed to having a job that's in one of the trades and probably making more than somebody who has a desk job. They may have that 4-year degree. They may even have a master's degree. But the person who's a plumber, like a Chad Jackson, or an electrician, I know one personally, he made more money than me, and I had a desk job. You know what I'm saying? So I was sold that lie, and so many other people were sold that lie. However, we can't just flip a switch and turn America into a manufacturing powerhouse and expect that this policy is not going to have a massive, massive impact on the American economy. And the last thing I'll say is that, I just looked at a chart on this, that why Trump lost. Ground News did a great chart, and it actually would have been something good to include in the show. I didn't think about that. Should have taken a screenshot of it, but they talked about why the Democrats lost, why so many people went for Trump. And he said, white men, young white men went for Trump. They skewed hard for Trump, and they went more for Harris as they got older. Moderates, non-white moderates went for Trump. White women, young white women went for Trump. Obviously, minority women, they basically super strong for Harris. They stayed Democratic. But the important thing is that he basically won on two things: the economy and it's like the trans stuff. He won on those two things. Those are the issues. And he was better about being out, in places like TikTok than Harris. Being on podcasts, like they said that the people who swung the hardest against Harris were the people who get most of their news from TikTok. They swung towards Trump by 5.9%. So that young people were they were looking at this coming into the economy as young people this ain't gonna work. He was elected on fixing the economy. And this, in my opinion, he has a very wrong-headed idea about how to fix these problems. I don't think it's completely wrong-headed. I just think that his idea of how to execute it is wrong-headed. And with that, I yield.
All right, no. So I'm just gonna interview you. So, because I'm thinking, okay, legitimacy to what he's trying. Where, hey, can you still hear me? I see I'm frozen. Okay.
You dropped out for a second, but you're back now.
Okay, yeah. All right, yeah. So there is a legitimate problem here. How do you get? Because you just said we don't make enough stuff here.
Yeah.
So how do you get stuff made here without making this move? Like what could be done to flip this trend around? Where you're forcing companies to come home, right? And is there a way to do that doesn't cause this level of pain? You know what I'm saying? So I guess what my question is, how could we do this without the pain? Or will there always just have to be pain in trying to flip this thing around?
I think it's a great question. So I do think that there has to be incentive. There has to be incentive to bringing manufacturing back home, because one of the reasons that people send it overseas is obviously the labor is so much cheaper. Cheaper. Getting things made in Mexico or China or Bangladesh, Taiwan, Indonesia, it's so much cheaper than getting something made here. And I think that there has to be enough incentive to change people's behavior. One of the things that I appreciate, I'll use Elon Musk as an example. People talk about, we need to get to sustainable energy. Now, notwithstanding all of the stuff that's coming out that's disproving essentially that climate change is some existential threat, and that a lot of things these models, right?
Shocked.
Turns out that they've been
Greta
wrong about that
Thunberg
since the
lied
70s.
to me. Why would she do that?
Hey, she moved off of climate change. She on Palestine now.
Oh. Exactly.
But notwithstanding all that stuff, I think that because he still believes that we need to get to sustainable energy, but he's not an alarmist as much as, a lot of other people are. But one of the things that he said that I think is absolutely right, he said you can't get people to change their behavior on this stuff without giving them an incentive to move towards that. And instead of trying to have an electric car mandate, we should just make electric cars better than any gas car. We should make the electric cars so good that people are like, why the heck would I buy a gas car? Why would I not buy this Tesla, right? So many people that I've had, that I know who have bought Teslas, they're like, dude, like there's no way I could go back. Like it's just a different experience. It's a completely different experience. Now, granted, we've seen the issues that Teslas can have, but for your normal day-to-day life, especially in the South, like if there's a charging station, the Tesla's just, it's on another level from a technology standpoint, et cetera. And so he draws people, right? He said, Leroy said, all my climate change peeps need to put their money where their mouth is and stop using toilet paper. You're right. I don't know if I'm a little bit concerned about that. I don't know if I want to smell them. I've smelled people who don't use toilet paper before, and I don't know, man. I don't know. I'm a little bit concerned about that. And I'm gonna get to what you're talking about here. On chips, on chips and processors.
That's where I was going next in terms of supply chain.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, so you got to incentivize people to make it more attractive to build things here. And there are certain areas where I think there are national security issues where I do think the government does have some grounds to step in and say, hey, this thing, you cannot have this thing made over in China and then ship this here and have it installed in critical infrastructure. So
and they do some of that. They do some of that.
Right.
I know like semiconductors, microchips. There's things like that. Like you can't, if you're going to use it in a DOD type project, you cannot get it from China.
100%. Look at what Israel did with the pagers. Imagine what China could do with a dadgum semiconductor. Exactly. Are you kidding me? Right.
Exactly.
So on those issues, I'm not a crazy person. If it's a national security issue, that is the government's job. And if you're engaging in stuff that lines your pockets but puts America at risk, I'm sorry, the government has a right to step in and stop you from doing that. Now, with another example was how the government stepped in and stopped telecom providers from using Huawei chips in their network stuff. And I'm like, absolutely. When I found out they were using Huawei chips, I was like, what are you guys smoking on? Do you have any idea the security risks that you're creating? The war risk, like actual military cyber attack risk that you're creating by trusting our telecom infrastructure to Chinese manufacturers. You're smoking crack if you think we can do that.
Smoking crack. Yeah, we told the Brits if they did that, we were going to cut them out of intelligence sharing. We're not going to trust you anything.
Why would we? I mean, those are areas where I'm like, I don't view that as protectionism. I view that as national security. That's national 100%. Security. That's a no-brainer to me. And the fact that any American company would think that they could do that, and again, get a higher profit margin, but put Americans at risk is It's asinine to me. It is incredible to me that they would make that decision, and I absolutely applaud the federal government for cracking down on that. But in other areas, we've got to figure out how to make manufacturing in the U.S. not be such an unbearable burden. And I think that part of that, Trump was great on deregulation. We have got to deregulate. We regulate the ever-living crap out of everything here. We've got to deregulate and make it less expensive. When I hear about some of the stuff some of the codes you got to pass, some of the nonsense the red tape you have to go through to make certain things here in the U.S., I am amazed that we get anything done. And so those are some of the areas that I would target: deregulation, tax incentives. If you want to do this stuff, drop the dadgum tax rate.
That's what I was going to go and ask you about. Would it have been better to just say, for these particular industries that we're trying to attract to the U.S., for the first 15 years, you have a 0% tax rate, right?
Yes. My goodness. Yes. Say, hey, look, you're going to bring manufacturing back. Apple, you want to make the iPhone here? You ain't paying no tax.
Yeah.
Can you imagine what that would get them to the table? It's like, okay, how do we do this?
That's how Alabama started their auto industry. So the state of Alabama has Mercedes, Hyundai, Toyota. It's several car manufacturing plants in the U.S. And the way the state of Alabama attracted them was offered them basically no taxes for like 15, 20 years.
Right.
Yeah, come here, bring jobs, and we won't tax you.
That's right.
And so that is a route that could have been taken rather than making a trade war to force companies, because it's so much cheaper somewhere else. So the question is, how do you make it cheaper here? He went the path of, we're going to make it more expensive for you there, versus making it cheaper for you here, which would have been a less controversial and easier pathway.
100%. And I don't even think it's just less controversial. Here's the reality of this. The idea that these countries are going to pay the tariffs and that we're going to get higher revenues from them paying the tariffs, the same way that our companies are reacting and trying to move manufacturing, et cetera, these other countries are going they're going to adapt, they're going to react. And so they're not just going to sit there and get put over a barrel and just keep taking it on the chin. They're going to adapt, and they're going to start saying, like, okay, maybe we don't buy American on this thing. There are some things, obviously, that it's really hard to get unless you get it from America, right? Like the iPhone, right? Mm-hmm. Granted, the iPhone's not made, it's not manufactured in America. It's designed in America, but like, they're going to adapt, and they're not just going to take it on the chin. And so you have sort of like a global trade landscape that is going to change based on this. And so, this is one of the other things that I don't like when we say that anybody who is for global trade is a globalist, in the sense that, like, we don't want America to have any sort of sovereignty in that area. Because when I hear globalist used as a pejorative, that's generally what people mean. It's like, you don't want America to have any sovereignty in whatever area that we're talking about. And that's not the case. I don't want to have to pay more for a number 2 pencil because the government forced it to be made in the United States. I think that's stupid. I don't want to have to pay more for, any of my goods because America forced it to be made in the United States. We have to get better and more efficient about manufacturing and make it attractive to manufacture in the United States. I think that we have to figure out how to make it cheaper. We have to regulate it less. We have to tax it less. And I think that the whole idea of having to ship something into the U.S. that was manufactured somewhere else becomes a lot less attractive if you pull levers that don't just straight up manipulate the market. It's one of the things that I do not think that the federal government should manipulate markets, and Trump is engaging in that, it's one of the things that I like least about him, that I still like least about him, is that he is absolutely willing to try to manipulate markets to get a certain outcome. And it's one of the things that the left loves to do because they love federal power. They absolutely love federal power. And this is one of the areas that I wish that Trump would be more of a conservative and not use the hammer of the federal government to do something that should be done through free markets.
Yeah. So I want to address Matt's comment about reciprocal taxes, because you brought it up as well, or reciprocal trade. The goal is not to get them to bring their tariffs down. That's not what we want. I think that's why he's not going that route, because the goal is to make manufacturing, those jobs, come back here. If they simply look a win, because that's not what he's going for. He's not going for it just being cheaper and all this type of. No, that's the problem. It's too cheap to get it from there, and American workers can't compete. And this is really a battle between what's best for the corporate business owner versus the American worker, right? So it is, global trade is so great for American businesses who can go and build their stuff overseas for much cheaper cost, import it in at very good tariff rates, and then sell it on the market, right? Very good for U.S. business. The problem with that, the trade-off with that, was the American worker, the person who does work with their hands, there's fewer of those jobs now because they went to places like Mexico and India and China because the labor was cheaper. Trump ran on, you've been screwed in this, and we're going to bring these things back, And so, to his credit, that is what he's doing. I don't know if it's going to work. I don't know if it's going to be successful, but his whole goal is to bring back these jobs that middle America lost to these countries over cheap labor so that the corporations can make more money. And that is why he sounds like Bernie Sanders, right? Because you start thinking about it, it's like, no, this is a policy for the little guy. He's not looking out for the billionaire. He's not, despite what the media says, right? He's not looking out for the big corporate guy. He is trying to force jobs back here so that American workers have those jobs now. That's to me, I think that's his whole goal. And so the idea of trying to get people to lower their tariffs and all that type of stuff, that's not what he's doing. That's why these countries, there's really nothing they can do to appease him, to prevent him from putting the tariffs in. Like, they can be like, oh no, we're going to comply and we're going to do this. It doesn't matter. He's going to put the tariff in anyway because he's trying to get the jobs back here, right? Yeah, and so I think that's what his plan is. The question just is it going to work? 5-10 years from now, because this is an immediate impact. Things just don't flip overnight, right? So 5-10 years down the road, we look up and America has this great manufacturing boom and hub. Are we gonna thank Trump, or is he gonna be the guy who got blamed for tanking the economy, so to speak? So it's gonna be interesting to see how this thing plays out long term, because I don't think this is not a short term game that he's playing, and so.
Well,
it's going to come down to how much faith and trust did you have in Trump and his way.
Yeah, and that's exactly right. That's exactly right. And man, because that hits on another problem that I have with the MAGA wing of the Republican Party. But I get to that in a second. Leroy asked, do you think it's a real goal, or is it to make them come to the table and make a deal? So, you kind of gave your answer on that. I think on some things it is his goal to bring American jobs back, and he doesn't really want a deal. And then there are other things where he's willing to make a deal, and he wants them to drop their tariffs so that we get more revenue from our exports. So I do think there are some countries where he wants to get. He's looking at it like a businessman. He's looking at it like, okay, if you're not going to buy anything from me, you really can't do anything for me. If I'm just going to buy stuff from you, you're not going to do anything for me. There's nothing that I can do. There's nothing that I benefit from this. So I'm going to tariff you. I want that stuff to come back and be made here. But with other major trade partners, I think he absolutely does want to make a deal. He wants to get them to drop their tariffs, and he is willing to make a deal on those. So I don't think it's necessarily a binary thing. And I think that the problem with his whole idea of looking out for the little guy, which is why he sounds like Bernie on this issue, is because unfortunately he's taking some of Bernie's logic on this, and I think that he's not looking at the levers that or the impact from pulling the lever, right? If you pull the lever to make it to where it's untenable to manufacture this thing out of the country for the business, the reality is the thing is going to get more expensive. And so that is going to hit everybody, especially consumers. The people who are going to feel it the worst are the people with less disposable income. And so it's going to hit the little guy in the mouth. And so if you don't have a lot of margin in your income every month to be paying more for things that are going to have to be manufactured elsewhere for the foreseeable future until these companies figure out a way to make something here where they might not even have the manufacturing infrastructure to do that, you are going to suffer. And this is why, and I'll go now to the whole, how much do you trust him thing. I'm going to be real. There's not him winning this election by a landslide was not Americans saying that we trust you implicitly. It's we want the economy fixed right now. We want it fixed. We've been suffering. Biden had terrible ideas. The Democrats had absolutely terrible ideas about how to fix the economy. As a matter of fact, they created some of the problems that we had with the economy. It wasn't just COVID. They just had terrible ideas. They were ideologues about climate. They had absolutely horrible ideas on those things, that they were going to force Americans to do things that were ridiculously expensive based on the idea that we're going to put some state or some country underwater in 12 years, which is some of the nonsense that they shove down people's throats, right? You know what I'm saying? And so this whole idea, we can't have any more natural gas leases, can't have any more oil drilling leases. They went hard line and wouldn't approve any more of them. And what happened? Gas got more expensive. People got pissed about it. They're like, all right, we only gonna take this for a minute. We don't like the mean tweets, but we only gonna take this for a minute. And they didn't back down on that.
Yeah.
And so here's what I predict happens. If his plan doesn't work, because he doesn't have a lot of time for his plan to work. If he's playing a long-term game, he doesn't have long-term time. The midterms are going to be a bloodbath.
That's why everything has been happening so fast, because he knows he doesn't have time.
Right.
This is what I will say. And I know we got to move on to the other videos. But a lot of this is a response to COVID. We talk about supply chain. COVID revealed a lot of issues with our supply chain and really showed how vulnerable we are, right? And so a lot of this stuff, this move to we have to assure manufacturing, we got to make sure we can produce things here at home. We got to make sure that we're not reliant on China and some of these other places, because when COVID happened, it really exposed the fact that, man, we have some real issues, and these are national security issues in terms of our reliability on other nations to provide essential goods for us. And so it makes sense that you want to bring things back home. What was being questioned now is the way it's being done, the tactics, and was there a better way to do it rather than force trade wars or force it to be more expensive in other countries, when we could have incentivized, deregulated, opened things up here, lower the taxes, offer tax incentives, to do things to make it to where people want to bring American jobs here. Another thing they could have done, because one of the issues we have, like you said, we don't train enough for people like trades and stuff like that in our education system. I know we talk about the Department of Education, it needs to go away, but you can still do some things on the federal level where you give incentives, right? I work in education. I work in academia. I work in research. We have a major issue of we don't have enough American students that want to stick around and get advanced degrees in STEM fields because, excuse me, they can make so much money as their bachelor's degree, or even if they stay and got a master's. They're not staying to do the research part. They're not getting the PhD. And so what the university is relying on are foreign students, a lot of them from China. And the thing is, China is funding their students to come here fully paid because they are focused on critical fields, right? And the American student has no federal backing that says, hey, if you want to go into hypersonics, you want to go into AI, you want to go into all of this stuff, we will pay you to stay in school and get your PhD, right? There is no we're not doing that in the certain areas that are critical to us. So there's no direction. You know, why aren't we incentivizing schools to add certain things to their the high school curriculum? You know, the trades, the electrician, the stuff. Like, we have to incentivize these things. And I think you were right in terms of the strategy. You should have been more of an incentive-based strategy versus a punitive strategy, if that makes sense. And so, so those are my thoughts, man. The trust factor, I'm not saying it's trust. I'm just I'm hoping. I see what you're trying to do, and I'm hoping you're successful. That's kind of where I am.
Yeah. No, I feel you on that. I real quick, I'll say, I do think that's a major problem. And China always tries to brute force or artificially create outcomes. They always are trying to do that in their economy, socially. I mean, it's just the name of the game with them. It's central planning. Everything about Chinese life is what they try to do. And that's the philosophy they want to export to the rest of the world as well. I think that for the things that you mentioned, like hypersonics, AI, things like that are going to have an impact on our military capability in the future, we need the next generation rising up and being able to make the military capabilities of the future. I personally think that is a very worthy area for the military to invest in young people going into college and say, hey, if you're picking this major, if you are going to go into the military, we will pay for you to get your advanced degree, to do this research. And there's a commitment on your part for us paying for this. If you're being serious, you're getting certain, you're keeping your grades up, you're vetted, you're an American citizen. You can't go somewhere else. You can't go to no other country. Okay. And I almost think that they should have a restriction that the person has to be an American citizen, in my opinion. And maybe there needs to be a track.
Well, they do, but this was happening. And this is where the H-1B stuff comes in. Because there aren't enough Americans that are willing to do it, they're bringing over these students from outside the country. And then these students end up staying here, and then eventually get citizenship, right? Because they're all trying to get to the point where, I can say they're all, but they want to get to the point where they can work on certain projects that they might need a security clearance for, or just higher level, And so they want to get a green card. They're trying to go through the legal process, but they're coming H-1Bs, to get their foot in the door. And that's what Vivek was trying to say is culturally, Americans aren't doing it. Right? That's
right.
That's right. You're relying in these high tech fields. You are relying on India and China. I can tell you right now, I'm at a university. There are American students, but when you start talking about the grad stuff, when you start talking about the advanced level research and all this type of stuff, man, it's going to be your Indians. It was China, but we're cracking down on that in certain fields. they can't get access to. But the universities, man, they're relying on these foreign students to come in. And it's not because they don't want the American. They want the American students. But if you got somebody who's in hypersonics, you got someone who is aerospace engineering, you know how much money they can make? And so you're trying to get them to stay in school and get a PhD and do research. They're going to go make a bunch of money working for Northrop Grumman, working for, all these defense companies, right? Keeping them in school, there has to be an incentive. Because there's just, we do it for the money at the end of the day.
Yeah. I mean, you got a family, you want to start a family, you want to get your family to a certain place. Absolutely. There's got to be an exchange of value, right? There's got to be an exchange of value. And so I do think that we have levers that we can pull to incentivize the American student to want to go into these fields. And, I think that there's as a marketing guy as well, like, I think that the American military needs to be advertising like crazy to be like, hey, you want to go do this? We go, man, I remember when I was a teenager and I would see the ads on TV and see the people in the Navy on the aircraft carrier with the fighter jets taking off and people working on military satellites and doing cool stuff. Like the military had some of the dopest ads out there. Like, and you looking at that, the Marines had some of the dopest ads where it's like, if you were a man,
Marines,
dude, if you were a man and you saw that and you were just like, dang, man, like that's a real
the dragon commercial. The guy slaying the dragon with the sword. Yeah.
Yes.
But hey, we're going back. I don't know if you've seen, they've got new commercials out. They've gone back to that.
That's what I'm talking about. Yes. Like that.
But
they need to do that.
They do. We got a lot to get to. We on the same topic, but we got a lot to respond to kind of take this conversation in some different areas. So let's go to that next video.
Roger that.
We do begin tonight with U.S. markets in a free fall today for a second day in a row after President Trump's sweeping new tariffs. The Dow dropping more than 2,000 points today, only the fourth time in history we've seen this, falling 5.5% today alone, plunging close to 4,000 points in 2 days. The S&P 500 closing down nearly 6% today, and the Nasdaq down nearly 6% as well. Tonight, China now retaliating with a 34% tariff on all U.S. goods sold in China. Tonight, you will hear from American farmers very worried about this, along with American families concerned over higher prices now. And just before the markets closed today, President Trump in Florida today posting, "Only the weak will fail." Democratic leaders asking why the president was golfing as the markets plunged for a second day in a row. So where does this go from here, and how much will the average American family likely pay in higher prices? ABC's Whit Johnson leading us off tonight. He's on Wall Street.
Tonight, the stock market in free fall after President Trump's sweeping tariffs. Today, the Dow losing more than 2,000 points in a single day, only the fourth time in history this has happened. The other three times, also all under President Trump during the pandemic. Tonight, millions of Americans are worried about rising prices and their shrinking 401ks. This snapshot of the Dow since President Trump's inauguration in January, erasing gains since he took office. The Dow down more than 14% since its record high, putting it into correction territory. And this is the tech-heavy Nasdaq during that same time, now officially in bear market territory, meaning it's lost more than 20% since its recent high. And this is the S&P 500 during the new administration, losing $5 trillion in just the past 2 days. Democratic leaders criticizing Trump for golfing today in Florida as markets plunged. Late today, President Trump standing firm, saying only the weak will fail. And tonight, China now firing back, saying they will now slap a 34% retaliatory tariff on U.S. goods coming into China. China banning 11 American companies and halting chicken imports from 5 of the largest agricultural exporters in the U.S. China is the third largest importer for U.S. agricultural products. American farmers are now bracing. Louise and Vance Emke have been farming in western Kansas for over 50 years, worried not only for themselves, but for the entire farming community.
It isn't just us, it's the people who sell the equipment. They aren't making equipment sales. It's the fertilizer people. You're buying less fertilizer. Who knows? You may have to lay somebody off and stretch whatever you have further.
And it's not just farming, it's electronics. Japanese gaming giant Nintendo now delaying the pre-orders of its highly anticipated Switch 2 console to assess the potential impact of tariffs and evolving market conditions. After President Trump said, quote, "I think it's going very well," tonight Secretary of State Marco Rubio describing the tanking global markets this way.
I don't think it's fair to say economies are crashing. Markets are crashing because markets are based on the stock value of companies who today are embedded in modes of production that are bad for the United States.
The White House concedes it could take up to 2 years for some manufacturing to come back to the U.S. Economists say it could take far longer and cost billions. Not to mention the additional cost of labor paying workers in America when workers overseas make far less. James Evans from Baltimore manufactures car parts here in the U.S. and is hopeful this gamble works.
I think in 3-4 years, it should set us up and other people that are manufacturing here in America for success.
In the meantime, Americans are set to pay more at the grocery store for electronics and for cars. The average family of 4, analysts say, could pay $7,000 more in higher prices a year.
Should Americans expect things to get worse before they get better?
I think we're in for a bumpy ride. And again, it could get worse from here, depending on what we see from the rest of the world and what we see further from businesses and consumers as they respond to this.
And David, tonight, Fed Chairman Jerome Powell is warning that Trump's tariffs will increase inflation, and a dramatic step from J.P. Morgan saying that this will only raise the chances of a recession in the U.S. to 60%. David?
Whit Johnson leading us off from Wall Street. Whit, will be watching you here this weekend. Thank you.
Yeah, that didn't lay out a very pretty picture. This is now you understand why the market is doing what it's doing, because it's just uncertain. It is so much uncertainty right now, which way this thing is going to go. Even if you understand the intent, even if you understand why, it's still like, I don't know, you know?
Yeah, I think that what he is asking, to happen right now is something that can't happen right now. It is going to take years for manufacturing infrastructure to catch up with what he wants to see. I understand that the American worker wants to see manufacturing come back here and for that boom to happen. You know, I think that there's some perspective that's needed for why American manufacturing boomed after the Second World War. Part of the reason that American manufacturing boomed was because the rest of the world was rubble. Europe was rubble. Japan was rubble. Yeah. Like stuff was, you know, we were buying American and all that stuff because that stuff was rubble. But I mean, you look at, you know, I come from, you know, I have a lot of different backgrounds, tech, advertising, you know, a lot of different areas in business, right? One of my jobs was helping companies with their product strategy and helping them with innovating on their products. And so I had to start getting better at understanding what makes people buy something. And as a part of that process, I wound up learning about some of the history of manufacturing in the world. And there was kind of a period where, you know, American manufacturing was king, but that was because other countries were destroyed that were the industrial powerhouses, right? They were destroyed by World War II. And so what we have to realize is like it's not that our products were always amazing. Some of them were. Some of them weren't, but there was no competition. Yeah. There was no competition. And when, for instance, with the auto industry, when Japan started to implement things like, what did they call it? I can't remember some of the specific terms. It's like just-in-time manufacturing and some of their innovation processes that they use to systematically weed out manufacturing defects in cars. It got to that's how we got to Toyotas and Hondas being some of the most reliable cars on the road, because they innovated with their manufacturing process. If we were doing free trade with Japan back then, right? Which, they were an enemy in World War II, so of course we weren't doing that. And Japan, up until a certain point in world history before that, was an isolationist country, which, by the way, their isolationism had them as a backwards country. The Japan now is not the Japan that it was before they stopped their isolationist policy as a country. They were backwoods before they started opening up to the rest of the world. Once they started to figure that stuff out, I mean, yeah, like people wouldn't have been buying American cars if they had to compete with the reliability of Japanese cars. Like back in the day, Japanese cars were trash. And then they started getting smart, and they started working on their manufacturing processes. And I think that, this is some of the beauty, right, of global trade, is that I get to benefit from them doing that. Now, I think that the desire to get manufacturing back over here, I think that we do need to be bullish, not bullish is not the right word. We need to be aggressive about, for instance, semiconductor manufacturing. That right there, I am all for the federal government saying like, hey, yo, we can't be buying all our semiconductors, all of our, 5 nanometer, 7 nanometer semiconductors from Taiwan anymore. TSMC cannot have the global monopoly on this stuff. Y'all better figure this stuff out yesterday, because the idea that if China invades Taiwan, that the rest of the world is screwed on being able to make computers and car microchips and all kinds of other things that control very important electronics, military electronics, etc. We can't be depending on Taiwan for that. That's not a smart policy. And so with that stuff, I am all for saying, hey, I'm not waiting 5 years for you to figure this out. Figure this junk out now. Get this junk over here now. But I'm not okay with us saying blanket across the economy that all of a sudden we got to make everything here. Otherwise, you're going to pay, you're going to pay like a massive amount more as a consumer. Because that's the other thing. The Trump administration doesn't like it when the Democrats say this. This is one of the few times you will ever hear me agree with a Democrat. One of the few times.
Here we go.
Because it's convenient for them to tell the truth in this instance, okay? This is going to tax the consumer because the business is going to raise the price on the good. They are not going to just take this on the chin. I am a businessman. I can tell you that, like, I would not be just taking it on the chin because I'm putting the company at risk. I'm putting jobs at risk if I just absorb all of that cost. Would I absorb some of the costs? Probably. But I would not absorb all of the costs. So the consumer is going to pay more. They are going to pay more. And the reality is that everybody who voted for Trump, when they start seeing that the grocery bill goes up, it's like, we voted for the exact opposite of this. So what the heck you doing up there at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue? What you doing?
And this is one of the somewhat of who Trump is and the position he's in. I say danger because there's a benefit to it as well. Trump doesn't care about re-election. He doesn't care about the Republican Party. He doesn't care about short-term bad press or news. Like, he just doesn't care. It doesn't affect him. He's not getting reelected, and he doesn't care anything about the future of the Republican Party. Like, that's just not who he is.
He definitely don't care about that.
Yeah, so if he has a long-term goal, and that's part of, I'm just gonna be honest, that's part of the reason Republicans like him. And when I mean Republicans, I'm not talking about the politicians, I'm talking about the people, the conservatives. Because they felt like Republicans of old never did the things they wanted because they were always concerned about winning their next election, right? And that's how you end up with the uniparty. And so it's one of those things though. I got to stand by when it go well, when it go bad. This is what we voted for. We wanted someone that wasn't going to do the status quo, that was going to do something different, that was going to pull us out of this relying on global trade and all the stuff he said he was going to do. So if one of those things we were, even though nobody's 100% in on what someone does, but at the end of the day, we got a hashtag. We voted for this because we did. He's not doing anything he didn't say he was going to do.
It's true, but he is going back on what he said on the campaign trail, because he said that he said that the prices were going to go down, and then close to I can't remember, it was like right before the election or right after the election. I think it was right after the election. He was like, I think he was basically like, well, prices might go up for a while. And then people were like, oh, wait a minute now.
I never bought the whole prices going down because of this. because prices were up, not because of the economy per se. Prices were up because of what inflation did. The dollars, right? It's like looking at prices from 1950 and thinking you can get back there. You're never going to get back there. It's so the same thing with prices. Look at 2019. We're never getting back to 2019 prices. It's just not going to happen because of what inflation has done. Now you can stop the rate of inflation, but you're not going to reverse it to where prices just go down because they expanded because of inflation. And so I never bought into this idea that Trump's going to come in and put some policy and that was going to make groceries or the economy make things cheaper, because of the only thing you can do is slow inflation. You can't reverse it. It doesn't go back. We're not going back to 1985 prices. You don't go backwards. But what you can do is stop the rate in which things become more expensive. I definitely think he's doing that by this, because even they said he's risking, the Fed chairman said this is going to cause more inflation. So we'll see, man. We'll see if there's a long-term gain out of this. But I think your favorite video is next, because you are a Reaganite. You are a Reaganite, man.
Straight up.
When I heard this, I was like, "Oh man, this is Devin all day."
Yeah, I thought I almost sent it to you. I can't remember if I did or not. I almost sent it to you.
No, you did. That's how I got it. You sent it to me.
Yeah. No, this video's gold. That I real quick before we go to that video, I just want to say, like, I did think that he could get prices down on some things, because I do think there are certain policies that the Biden administration had that he could reverse, like deregulation and energy policy. I think that with those two things, he could actually bring prices down significantly.
100%.
And so I'm just like, don't screw up a good thing, bro. Like, you could have brought the prices down, man. Come on.
No, I agree with you there, especially when it comes to energy costs, transportation costs. You can bring the price of goods down somewhat by lowering that cost. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. But yeah, we're gonna talk to our man Ronald Reagan real quick.
Those of us who lived through the Great Depression, the memory of the suffering it caused is deep and searing. And today, many economic analysts and historians argue that high tariff legislation passed back in that period, called the Smoot-Hawley Tariff, greatly deepened the Depression and prevented economic recovery. You see, at first, when someone says, let's impose tariffs on foreign imports, it looks like they're doing the patriotic thing by protecting American products and jobs. And sometimes for a short while it works, but only for a short time. What eventually occurs is, first, homegrown industries start relying on government protection in the form of high tariffs. They stop competing and stop making the innovative management and technological changes they need to succeed in world markets. And then, while all this is going on, something even worse occurs. High tariffs inevitably lead to retaliation by foreign countries and the triggering of fierce trade wars. The result is more and more tariffs, higher and higher trade barriers and less competition. So soon, because of the prices made artificially high by tariffs that subsidize inefficiency and poor management, people stop buying. Then the worst happens. Markets shrink and collapse, businesses and industries shut down, and millions of people lose their jobs. The memory of all this occurring back in the 30s made me determined when I came to Washington to spare the American people the protectionist legislation that destroys prosperity. Now, it hasn't always been easy. There are those in the Congress, just as there were back in the 30s, who want to go for the quick political advantage, who risk America's prosperity for the sake of a short-term appeal to some special interest group.
That sounds a lot like what's trying to be done now. And his arguments against it sounds a lot like yours. That protectionism just means he's lazy because they're protected from innovating and making things better and reaching the next level. And yeah, they get comfortable. And so, yeah, when you sent me this, I was like, man, this either Devin created this with AI or or Reagan is saying something that you've been feeling the whole time.
Oh yeah, no. When I saw that video, I had never seen it before. I'd never seen that that clip, and I watched it and I was like, bam! Like there it is. He just laid the whole thing out right there.
Yeah.
And that is one of the reasons I have a problem with protectionism. And here's why I have a problem with it. And it's a big part of why I love business, why I'm an entrepreneur, is because you don't have a right to make money. You don't have a right to make money. You have a right to have the freedom to pursue making money. And so protectionism says you have a right to be able to make this thing or to have this person buy from you or to have this job. And you don't. You have to compete to win that customer. I am fully 100%. I want to compete to win. And now anywhere where somebody is cheating, somebody is playing games that makes it hard for somebody to be an honest business person or an honest worker, and make a good living, absolutely, I want to come for them. I want to come after them because we want to make it to where people want to innovate. They want to make great products. They want to provide great service. And that is what should win the day. I do not like this whole idea that we are going to, because we want to get back to the golden age of, American manufacturing, we're going to try to artificially create that environment. I have a problem with that. I think this is one of the things that I love about our country. And I think that we have the ability and the legal structure and the culture to be able to innovate, to be able to win. And so I'm just like, let's figure out how to do this in a way that makes the world better, not use a punitive measure to try to get back the golden age, because that's never going to work. And so that's my beef with all this. The punitive measures, the protectionist measures don't push things forward. I want us to do this in a way that pushes things forward. And I firmly believe that America can figure out how to do this in a way that pushes things forward. And like I said, in my earlier statements, I think that we have leaned too hard in certain directions. But I think that the protectionist measures, they smack of Soviet Union, communist, central planning philosophy of we can engineer the economy that we want. And I think that history has shown that that's arrogant and it doesn't work.
Yeah. Well, that's kind of been the strategy since the Depression and the creation of the Fed and all of this type of stuff was manufactured to prevent that. That's been the whole goal and plan. We'll see. I'm going to play devil's advocate a little bit on the protectionism thing. Because, I can see in a way protectionism could drive that. But that still doesn't stop internal competition. It doesn't stop competition amongst companies within the U.S. It also doesn't prevent foreign companies from manufacturing in the U.S. And so it's not that you're protecting American companies. You're just rewarding companies who manufacture here in the States. And that could be any company from around the world. And so it doesn't necessarily have to stop competition. You're just trying to manipulate where they manufacture their goods because you want it here. And so in that situation, it does not necessarily have to lead to I guess a lack of competition and a complacency, because you're not just protecting the US company, any company. Now, it would be one thing if you kept other companies out. You kept other country, you didn't let Japan build Toyota cars in America. That would be different. But the fact that they are allowed to come here, build and compete, I think you can still have that competition even with this tariff thing that he's trying to do, because you're not closing it off from other countries or manufacturers. If that makes sense.
Yeah, that I definitely see where you're coming from on that. I think that my issue is just like, okay, do we okay, like, yeah, they can still come here and compete. We're essentially assuming a bully position to try to get them to do that.
Absolutely. That's exactly what you're doing.
Yeah. And there's a I don't think that long term, I don't think that's a long-term great strategy, because what you're doing right now is you're punching them in the mouth and then saying, come over to my house and play. I'm like, I don't know about that.
But this is gonna be my pushback. Not pushback, but my counter. I'm thinking here, why are we doing this? We're doing it to compete with China. What does China do? China forces very, very strict rules. If you want access to their economy, these are the things you got to do. If you want to, you're gonna have to. A lot of times you have to partner with a Chinese company. They have all of these rules in place that forces companies. If you want to play in their market, you want access to their billion people, these are the things you have to do. And to a degree, it has put us at a disadvantage. Because they don't play by these open global rules that we've been playing by. And so a lot of what Trump is doing is saying China is screwing us by coming up with their own rules. They have all of these things on U.S. companies. They're stealing all of our IP, And so this is almost like the United States from a central planning perspective, because instead of just letting the market do what the market do, because that works and everybody's playing by the rules. But not playing by the rules, at some point there has to be some type of central planning that counters intentionally the things that they're doing to put the U.S. Market in a better position. And so some of this is being forced by we're getting the short end of the stick on China, because China has all of these stipulations. And what the U.S. companies do to compete in China? They capitulate. They give in to what China wants, because they want. And so you saying he's playing bully ball, but he's just doing that because that's what China's been doing. China does it to U.S. companies. And so now we're saying, okay, if y'all want access to U.S. markets, you want this, you want that, this is what we want you to do. We want you to come and build, manufacture here, because, like I said, look at the tariffs they have on us. And it's crazy. It's only bad when the U.S. puts tariffs. But when they put tariffs on our things, which they have at a much higher rate, why is it okay? Why does their economy still work with tariffs on us? But the minute we put tariffs, it's like, oh no, this is bad. A lot of it is, I don't know. I would like to talk. I mean, I might have to find an economist to come on, because I want them to explain to me why higher tariffs work on U.S. exports. But when we try to put higher tariffs on our imports, it's the end of the world. I need to know how does it flow, and how does it work so great for these other countries, but not for us?
I think that I think the reason that it works, and this is one of the areas actually, and I'll reiterate, I'm totally okay with putting a reciprocal tariff on those countries. I have zero problem with that. I was like, hey, listen. y'all want to put a tariff on us? We can put a tariff on you. You guys are trying to make this one way. You're trying to make it harder for consumers in other countries to buy our goods. You're not just going to keep. You're not going to keep smacking me in the face, and me keep just taking that, right? Like if we on the ball court, you keep smacking me in the face. Eventually, we gonna throw hands. And so, I am all for saying if we're trying to have a good trade relationship, but you tariff my stuff coming into your country, I'm gonna tariff your stuff coming. You tariff my stuff coming to your country, I'm gonna tariff your stuff coming to my country. I think that's fair. I think it's absolutely fair. I just have an issue when it's somebody. His whole formula is jacked up. The whole formula of how they calculate tariffs is jacked up. Do a reciprocal tariff. Say if you tariff us, we tariff you. I would love that. Because the formula that he used depends too much on some of these countries, they are not going to spend as much on American goods because they just don't have the money. They don't have it. Yeah. The whole country don't have the money. I mean, some of these countries, a couple of U.S. states is richer than their whole country.
That is
what you think is going to happen? You know what I'm saying? Poor people here,
absolutely.
Compared to poor people in some of these other countries, poor people here are rich.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. Oh, man, don't get me started on that. So let's switch it to the political realm. We've talked a lot about economics, but there's always, when someone's in power, there's always the opposition party, right?
Yep.
You've already mentioned how much Trump sounds like Bernie Sanders. And I'm sure Democrats and the left were very, very pro Bernie Sanders. Feel the burn, right? And it's crazy because Republicans weren't, but now all of a sudden, Trump has very similar rhetoric and policies. They're like, yeah, man, this is great. But Nancy Pelosi had a very, very particular view on tariffs and on China that sounds a lot like Trump today.
Yes.
Sounds a lot like Trump today. And we know that they're saying the exact opposite now, or she's saying the exact opposite now. And so if you want to, we can dive into that clip of good old Nancy really sounding like she's MAGA.
Here we go. Here we go. Old Nancy right here.
Does China have to go? How much more repression? How big a trade deficit and loss of jobs for the American worker? And how much more dangerous proliferation has to exist before members of this House of Representatives will say, I will not endorse the status quo? As I mentioned, it's about jobs, proliferation, and human rights. And there are those who say we shouldn't link human rights and trade and proliferation and trade. I disagree. But if we just want to take up this issue on the basis of economics alone, indeed, China should not receive most favored nation status for several reasons that I'd like to go into now. I'd like to call the attention of our. Right now, we have a $34 billion trade deficit with China, the 1995 figure. It will be over $40 billion for 1996. Since the Tiananmen Square massacre, this figure has increased 1,000%, from $3.5 billion then to about $34 billion now. In terms of tariffs, I think it's interesting to note that the average U.S. MFN tariff on Chinese goods coming into the United States is 2%, whereas the average Chinese MFN tariff on U.S. goods going into China is 35%. Is that reciprocal? On exports, China only allows certain industries into China, of U.S. Industries into China, and therefore only 2% of U.S. exports are allowed into China. On the other hand, the U.S. allows China to flood our markets with a third of their exports, and that'll probably go over 40%. And it's limitless because we have not placed any restriction. In terms of jobs, this is the biggest and cruelest hoax of all. Not only do we not have market access, not only do they have prohibitive tariffs, not only are our exports not let in very specifically, but China benefits with at least 10 million jobs from U.S.-China trade. The president in his statement requesting this special waiver said that China trade supports 170,000 jobs in the United States, 170,000 jobs, whereas our imports from China support 10 million jobs at least. Fact is that U.S.-China trade is a job loser. And one of the reasons that it is because well, first let me just make another point, and that is that our colleagues on the other side of this issue will say that trade with China, exports to China have increased 3 times in the last 10 years. They have. But they fail to mention that imports from China have increased 11 times, thereby leading to this huge trade deficit. The other issue, in addition, if intellectual property is a $2 billion, $3 billion loss, technology transfer is in the hundreds of billions of dollars. If you want to sell to China, your products into China, the Chinese insist that you open a factory there. They misappropriate your technology, open factories of their own, and then say to you, now we want to see your plan for export. That's as simply as I can say it briefly. But the fact is, this isn't about products made in America. The Chinese want American products that are made in China. And the most serious of these transfers of technology are in the airline industry, where Boeing tail sections of the Boeing 737s were mostly made in Wichita, Kansas. Now they are made in Shen province, where workers make $50 a month. And the transfer of the technology and the transfer of the jobs has taken place. General Motors, Ford, they're all fighting to get in to build factories there so they can make parts there. They want MFN so they can get those parts back into the United States. So we are exporting not low-tech jobs and textile jobs. We're exporting our technology. Now, if you take a country the size of China with the very cheap, and in some instances, slave labor, the lack of market access, the rip-off of our intellectual property, the transfer of technology, a country that is not willing to play by the rules in any respect in this trade relationship, you have a serious threat not only to our relationship, or does China have to go? How much more repression?
So I think that was the end, maybe.
Yeah, it was. They started over.
Okay. Yeah.
That Nancy Pelosi, I would vote for.
Yeah, I was like, daggone, why am I liking what Nancy Pelosi is saying right now?
Because everything she said was straight facts, and it's exactly what happened. We just turned a blind eye to it because so many people, corporations, were making money, and the jobs were going through. Trump made, right? This phenomenon of Trump was made because they allowed this China situation to get so bad. This is all about China, as I said earlier. They have ripped us off. They have taken jobs from Wichita, Kansas. Now, everything she is saying is everything Trump said. And it's one of those things of, that's the politics of it. That's what I hate, because it lacks honesty, because she knows it's right. She knows what Trump is saying is true. But, okay, so my question is, at what point did Nancy get bought off to shut up? Right? Because she's very wealthy now.
Yeah.
So once again, I'm bringing it back to politics. I'm bringing it back to MAGA. I'm bringing it back to why Trump is so popular and why the establishment politicians are viewed as selling out the American people. They sold us out. They got rich, and they sold us out to China when they knew that it was going to be have a very, very negative impact on U.S. jobs. And so now, we're talking about the shrinking middle class and all this type of stuff, but all of those places in middle America and the Midwest, all these steel towns and manufacturing towns that basically just died and went away, and then all the people there are now on meth and drugs and stuff like that. Yeah, because we sold them out. And that's why Trump is so popular, because Trump came and was like, yo, they sold y'all out. And I know, because I'm a businessman, and I put my stuff overseas. I put my plant in Mexico because the government incentivized me to do it, so I did it, right? He was honest, and that's why people liked him, because he was singing what they already knew to be true, right? And so if Nancy Pelosi from 1996 was still true to herself and talked about the issue in a real legitimate way, maybe the Democrats wouldn't be in the position they're in, right? Just saying.
So I would say, that having things manufactured overseas isn't necessarily selling out the American worker. The reality is that, like, okay, if this thing can get manufactured overseas and it can be done just as well for lower cost, right? What average person can say, I can get this good, I can get this product way less expensive, same quality, less expensive, which we know is often not the case actually with a Chinese product, right? What average person is not going to go buy the cheaper product? They're like, oh, I can increase the profit margin in my household. I am going to go get the product from over there. So the businesses are making that decision, and so have the people been making that decision. Because if you take an American manufactured product and a Chinese manufactured product, you put them on the shelf, and the Chinese manufactured product is so much cheaper, obviously somebody's going to go get that. Now, I agree with a ton of what Pelosi was saying there, because China does not play by the rules. And they, as a matter of fact, do engage in some slave labor. And when
IP
Foxconn, IP theft, like insane amounts of IP theft. There are certain things that I see, made there. What's like, you literally just ripped off this other company because you got the manufacturing plants there. So you got the blueprints, you got all this stuff, and you just slap another brand name on it. And we should be punishing you. We should be punching you in the mouth for that. It blows my mind that we're not punching them in the mouth for that. So there's been a reckoning coming for a long time. I may disagree on some of the particulars, because I don't think that we necessarily sold people out. As people engage in the behavior that they want to engage in. It's kind of my same argument with when people talk about, oh, buy local, don't buy from Amazon, right? It's like, so, or they're actually, I shouldn't say that. They get mad. They get mad at Amazon. They're like, oh, Amazon came in, or they get mad at Walmart. Walmart came in, and then nobody buys from my store anymore. It's like, I'm gonna keep it real with you. If the Walmart came in and people started going and buying from the Walmart, like, the Walmart's not doing anything illegal. So what you need to start asking is, why are people going to buy this thing from the Walmart instead of you? Again, you don't have a right to have the customer. So why are they buying from the Walmart? And it's time to compete. It's time to compete. And maybe you can't bring the price down on what you're doing, but you can compete on, hey, the stuff that I make is way higher quality than what you're going to get at that Walmart. American companies, same thing. I know that like a bag, I got a friend of mine who owns a leather goods company. The bags that they make, way higher quality than what you're going to get out of a Chinese company, but you're going to pay way more. And the reality is that you ain't gonna be able to afford his bags until you have a certain amount of disposable income. But they tout that all their bags are American made, and they're doing really well. They're a 7-figure company. They had to compete. They have to compete against the people who make cheaper bags, and actually they have to compete as well against some people who make more expensive bags but still have their bags manufactured elsewhere. And he proves that the bags that they make, like I guess I probably shouldn't name any name brands so we don't get in no trouble. But some of the bags that are more expensive, he can prove. He's like, actually, they're shipping that stuff. They're shipping that stuff from overseas, and it's actually worse quality, but they're charging you more because they got their brand name on it. and you could actually pay less with what we have and get a better bag. So some of that stuff goes both ways. But like the other thing I want to hit on is the trade deficit thing, man. She's hitting on the trade deficit thing, and maybe I'm just ignorant, man. Maybe I'm just ignorant, okay? Trade deficit. I was like, y'all talk about trade deficit with China. Their consumers have to decide to buy our stuff. You can't enforce trade parity.
No. Their consumers have to choose to buy it, but not if they don't let it in. That was her argument.
Right. But
that's
my
the
thing
argument.
Is the whole term of trade deficit, the whole point is I don't like that, because you might still have a trade deficit if they still choose to buy stuff from their own country, even if they don't have their stupid policies that block our products from coming in the country. They may still do that, and you may still have a trade deficit. So what, you going to punish them because they ain't buying your products as much? I think that's crazy.
No, because this is what they're doing, and this is why they have higher tariffs on U.S. goods. The U.S. product is on the shelf. They've making it more expensive by putting the high tariff. That's what this whole thing is about. It's not the free market. This isn't free market. This is not. We plan on equal playing fields. We are giving them preference in our markets, and they are hindering us in their markets. That's what's going on.
I'm not disagreeing with that. I'm disagreeing with the way that Trump puts forth the trade deficit, and the way some of the way that Nancy put forward the trade deficit. It puts a false concept in there that they gotta buy from us just as much as we buy from them.
Yeah.
Okay. There can be a trade deficit, and maybe it's a problem. But the way they put it forth, it's like it's always a problem, and I think that puts a wrong concept in the layman's mind.
No, you're 100% right. A trade deficit doesn't mean there's nefarious things going on. It just means your economy is way bigger than theirs. But so you do have to look at the practices that are going on, and if we look at the practices that are going on, they have higher tariffs on U.S. goods. They do.
Yeah,
because they don't want, and so I don't know what the solution is to that. Because
punch them in the mouth. I love the idea of Trump going hard in the paint against China on this. I think they should be catching all the bazooka. They should be catching RPGs and all that trade RPGs, because they are screwing us. They are they absolutely want to have an imbalance there as big as possible, because they want to benefit from our money, and they don't want their people to become dependent on our goods. And in my opinion, that sort of relationship is not a relationship. That's a frenemy, right? And they've been frenemies for the longest
100%.
time.
That's what it is,
right?
Yep.
And I'm like, no, go hard in the paint against them. There are other countries I don't think we should do that with. I don't think we should be punching Canada that hard. I think that's a bad idea. But if they put a tariff on our stuff, no, I'm gonna tariff you. Yo, you my next door neighbor. Why you tariffing my stuff? I'd come across the yard and punch you in the mouth, right? You know what I'm saying? Like that. Yeah. They shouldn't be doing that. So again, I'm for reciprocal tariffs. I'm absolutely for reciprocal tariffs.
I think the U.S., Canada, and Mexico should have a much more open and beneficial trade agreement with each other. 100%. NAFTA. Yeah, we can do better.
Yeah,
we can do better. So all of this has been bad news. Everything is crashing. Everything is horrible. But I do want to bring up something to add some perspective to what we've seen in the stock market in terms of this massive fall we've seen. I think we need some perspective. So if you can pull up the graphic that we can talk about.
Yes.
Disregard
Sorry.
No, you're good. I didn't know we had to do that. But disregard the blatant, hey, ignore and panic stuff. Just look at the chart, right? And where we were as an economy in terms of the stock market, 2022, 2023 versus where we are now. Even with the drop, we are still way above where we were just a couple of years ago. And so, yeah, wow, this is like, oh my goodness, I can't believe how much my 401k drop is higher than it was in 2023, right? Still way higher. And so it's one of those things of, okay, people, just calm down a little bit. This is a reaction to something. The market responded. But if next week it bounces right back up to 45,000, then what are we talking about? So, like, don't panic, ride the wave. And also, unless you're planning on retiring tomorrow or you're already retired, this don't affect you. Stop looking at your 401k. You got 15, 20 more years to work. Stop doing it, right? Where it is today does not matter. So stop freaking out because your 401k dropped 20%. It's okay. Go back up, So just some perspective. What are your thoughts on this, man?
No, I think that's good, man. I do think that some perspective is important. I think that, this graphic helped me, to be honest with you. I mean, I don't have a 401k. Yeah. I pulled all my money out of my 401k to start, my business.
This man is a entrepreneur and a risk taker. This is what America's about. It is. No protectionism. No protectionism. You got to put your neck out there and go out there and do it.
That's, call me crazy, and maybe I am crazy. Thank God my wife was crazy enough to do this thing with me. But that's why when you hear me go hard in the paint on this stuff, I get pissed when people want somebody else to come save them, and they want protection. Like, ain't no protection out here for me. Like, I don't even have a 401k to fall back on now. I just got to be better. I just have to be better. I gotta be in the gym, man. I gotta do it. But I still think this is great perspective because we are doing much better from where we were during COVID. I do think that I do think that things are going to get better one way or another. My hope is that Trump changes his tune on some of this stuff, or that like he makes some deals. Like some of these instances, I do think he's trying to make a deal, and I hope that those people do make a deal. I think that some of these people that got hit, they needed to get hit, and I hope that a deal happens. But I do think this is some a bright side. It's like, hey, we in general we still trending up. It's gonna be okay. And if it's not okay, I hate to say this, if it's not okay. There will be change if it's not okay.
Yes. And that's my fear. Okay, this is my biggest fear. Because things can have big swings.
Yes.
If Trump's policies do not work or show immediate turns, like let's say in 4 years, America could be tempted to go hardcore socialist. Hardcore left.
Yes, that is one of my fears.
Hardcore leftist, protectionist, socialist programs or economy. That's my fear.
Yes. Well,
because we've seen it. So that's why I'm like, I want this to work so bad. Not because I'm like, I want Trump to succeed. No, I want America to succeed. But I'm afraid if it doesn't work, if this goes off the rails, we could end up with AOC type stuff, right? That is definitely not what we want.
Yeah, you can't retire tomorrow, Future. Sorry.
No, Future. Sorry.
I'm with you, brother. I think that is exactly one of my fears, is that this opens the way for AOC. If it doesn't go well, it opens the way for AOC. And she is angling. She is changing some of her rhetoric. She's trying to become more appealing to the middle.
I mean, as soon as the election was over, she removed her pronouns out of her bio on X. So, like,
she know what's up. She know what's
they're
up.
They're all trying to come to somewhat center.
But
if this fails, man, JD Vance ain't winning in 2028 if this fails.
Oh yeah.
Like, no.
Nah.
And it's gonna be hard to sell America on it again.
That's right.
So
that's exactly right.
The fate of America is could be at hand with this. If this doesn't work, we end up going down the leftist socialist train, which would be horrible.
That is, yeah. I've me looking at the chessboard. I love chess, and a lot of times I will look at things like a chessboard to try to see 3, 4, 5 moves into the future, and that is one of the possible futures that I see. I think that there are a couple other potential angles where it's not working. He pivots. He does something that does work, and that earns trust back. There's the path that it does work. I'm going to be honest. I don't see that happening in the short term. I think he is going to have somewhat of a pivot. I could be wrong on that. Maybe there are some things that are going to happen. I have criticized his methods in the past and wound up wrong. So I know there's a possibility that I wind up being wrong on this. But it will not be because I wasn't looking at the information on the board and arriving at conclusions that were crazy. It's that dude's making a gambit and it happened to work out, and I don't know that anybody else could have pulled it off the same way. Still don't mean that I trust him implicitly, but
but think about this though. Think about this. This is the crazy thing. Democrats would benefit off Trump losing using Democrat type policies,
which is crazy.
This is a Bernie Sanders type. This is yes. And so this is the position he's in. He's getting negative attention from conservatives because this isn't a conservative or typical Republican strategy, right? That's why Ben Shapiro, what's the guy who owned Barstool Sports? I forgot his name.
Dave Portnoy.
Yeah, Dave Portnoy. Yeah. So he came out and was like, yo, because he basically said, look, if it was the Democrats, I'll be railing on it. So I got to rail on it now when it's Trump, right? And so the conservatives aren't behind this. The Democrats, who this is their type of policy, would be behind this.
Right.
But because he's in the opposition party, they're against it. So right now, everybody's against it.
Right. Which is wild, and he's got to be feeling that to some degree. I think that another possible future that I charted out in my head is it doesn't work. Republicans lose power, and in the short term, Democrats actually have to use Republican policies to bring the economy back. And we start pushing the Democrats to the right. I'm like, that's another possible future.
That is a possibility. Look, people give me a hard time because Republicans always try to argue that the big flip or the big switch between Republican and Democrats in the 60s. I always argue, yes, it did. Right. And we're seeing this real time now. Who would have thought that Democrats would be pro-war and Republicans would be pro-Russia and anti-war? Right? Who had that on their bingo card 10 years ago? But we see in our real day how these parties have basically switched platforms when it comes to foreign policy. So why is it that we act like it's some crazy thing to realize that in the 1960s, because of just for political strategy purposes, right? In terms of race and who's going out to the South, they switch platforms. They start singing different tunes and all this type of stuff, right? We're seeing it real time how they flip. We just played that Nancy Pelosi video from 20 years ago. Well, no, 30 years ago. Yeah, 30 years ago.
Yeah.
That Nancy Pelosi video. Now, and she was a Democrat. Now you got a Republican Trump saying the same thing and all the MAGA behind it. And now Nancy Pelosi and the Democrats are completely against it.
Yeah.
They flip all the time.
So weird, man. It's so weird.
That is why I tell people you have to be principled. You can't do it based on the party and party loyalty.
Yes.
You have to be principled and place your vote based on the principles that are being argued. If the Democrats come to the right and all of a sudden they start talking and pushing right-wing economic Thomas Sowell policies, guess where my vote's gonna go? Right.
Right.
Not party loyalty. You have to have a philosophy of government, philosophy of economics, and you just got to stick to it and vote on those principles, man, and not be swayed back and forth based on tribalism or party. Because I see it all the time, man.
100%. No, that's one of the things y'all hear us talk about on the show quite often, that you need to have a solid political philosophy, and this is again the same thing. It's like us observing that Trump is he's really using more leftist trade tactics here, and I don't like them, not because they're leftist, but because I don't think that they work. And so, like Dave Portnoy, I don't like it when the Democrats try to do it. I'm gonna have to try to call it out when Trump does it. I feel you, Matt.
Matt, trust me. Hey, look, I grew up, because I'm black, I grew up a Democrat. And in my early 20s, I looked at things a little differently, and I switched and became a Republican. If things switch or things change, I can easily go back. Because it's not party loyalty. And that's why I tell people all the time, I'm not a Republican, I'm a conservative. And I'm going to vote wherever that lies. And I don't care about the party brand. If the Green Party comes out tomorrow and they're like hardcore conservative, guess what? I'm voting Green Party.
It's about the principles. It's about the principles. Yep. And to me, I want the Republican Party. I don't want the Republican Party to go down by the wayside. I think that there are certain principles upon which the Republican Party stands. I don't think that there was like a complete swap of values in the 60s. I think that the Republican Party still held on to certain values, like the protectionist stuff. The Democrats traditionally were the protectionists before they kind of swapped to be the party that was pro-black and all that stuff. And they're still that way. And it's interesting now that we're starting to see Trump switch that way. Thankfully, conservatives generally are like,
But Trump's not switching that way. Trump is a Democrat. He's a New York Democrat.
It's true.
That's
you're right.
He's a Democrat from 15 years ago.
You're right.
That's what the Republican Party has become. The Democrat Party 15 years ago, and Nancy Pelosi's video proves it.
Dude, that's straight up. You're right. You're exactly right. And man, like that's one of the things that. It's one of the things I worry about, and it's one of the things I worried about all the way back in 2016. It's one of the things I worried about. I was like, dude, he's not a real Republican.
Not really conservative. He's not
a real conservative. He's not a real conservative. He admitted it, and he got mad at one of the reporters that was like, hey, some people say you're not a real Republican, that, some of your policies aren't conservative. And his answer to that reporter back then was, who says the Republican Party has to be conservative? I'm like, I don't like that answer. I don't like that answer. And I think that, like, I don't want to just have a academic approach to stuff either. We have to do things that make sense in the real world, and we can have certain academic approaches to things, which is why I'm not a free market absolutist that like the government can't touch the market at all. Like, I don't think that works because of issues of national security. You can't just be a free market absolutist in that respect.
And monopolies.
There was a time, and I still lean that way a little bit. It's like, if I built this company, and I wind up winning most of the market, and the government comes in and they want to try to take it from me, I'm pissed because I built this freaking company, right? Like, me and my people built this company, and you're going to come in and try to take it. Now, if I'm engaging in nefarious things, I think there should be vehicles, but I don't like antitrust law. I don't like it because the government can just come and say, you're too big, we can break you up. And it's like, so what you're telling me is you can just come and take control of my private property because you don't like how big I got. Sounds pretty un-American to me.
No, take it. They're gonna make you split. You gotta create some competition. They're gonna make you split it up and sell it off to someone else.
It sounds commie to me, man. It sounds commie. You come and take my stuff because you don't like me winning. I don't like that. I want to win. There's a little bit of the Mamba, the MJ spirit, man. It's like, no, I want to win. If I win, you hate on me.
And that spirit drives. That's the great spirit to have. But we also know that spirit can get out of control. And it has to be.
It's true.
Yeah, and it has to be mechanisms to contain that some way or channel it the right way to where it doesn't get that way. And so that's all it is.
I would say I could get with you. I can get with you on you have to be able to make sure that a company doesn't get to the point where they're hurting people because they just have so much power, right? I just don't like the way that we do it now. When we made Microsoft, split up some stuff, and we were like, you can't make it so that your browser comes installed on Windows because that's unfair to other browsers. I'm like, y'all commies. They made that operating system, dadgummit.
Yeah,
like, y'all are commies.
that doesn't make sense to me. But that was just lobbyist groups from other companies winning. That's all that was.
Yeah,
something like that. No, it's all they can't put their own browser on their own product. That makes no sense.
Right, and that's antitrust. So that's one of the issues I have with antitrust. But I fully agree with you that you can't just allow somebody becomes a giant. You can't allow the giant to just go stomping on folk. I do think that we have to have some kind of measures. I just wish that we did it a different way that didn't give the ability for somebody to come in and do like what they did to Microsoft. I don't like that same law allows that.
I would say this: a company that has that kind of power basically would do the same thing that we're doing as the U.S. because we know our economy is the big dog, right? And so we can bully. You want to access to here? This is the price. No, we can dominate everything because we're the big guy on the block. Well, when you have a company that can do that inside the country, inside of a particular industry, it's just not good for the industry because they're just bullying everybody. And that's what people complain about Walmart. Walmart is so big that if you're a farmer or wherever, and you want to compete, you just have to do what Walmart says. And whatever little pennies they negotiate with you, because they're the big dog on the block, you got no choice. Yeah. But when you got Sprout, you got all these other options. Now Walmart has to compete for your product, right?
Yeah.
You got to create the competition. Let a company just dominate to where now everybody else is just at their mercy. You know?
Yeah. And that's that. I agree with that. And there are certain things it's like, okay, I would love to find the freedom-loving way to deal with that stuff that doesn't give the federal government the power to just come in and say, nah, you win it too much, we're gonna break you up. Because it can be weaponized. It can be politically weaponized.
100%. Yeah.
And so I get very concerned about that. Like I get concerned about them coming for Apple. I
don't know why they come. Apple doesn't have a market. They don't have a chokehold on the market.
They have a chokehold on certain markets, like iMessage. There was a point where there were people that were floating the idea of antitrust legislation against Apple to open up iMessage because in America, iMessage dominates. And now abroad it does not, but in America, iMessage dominates. And
that's the whole blue-green controversy.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
this is y'all Android.
I'm
people.
green. That's why I don't know.
Yeah, daggum Android people, man. Man.
Hey, Android forever. Forever.
Oh man, you in the military. You worked in intelligence, man. Android less secure than Apple, man. Come on, man.
It's good. It's all good.
Man,
buying no Apple. To me, buying an Apple product was like buying a Prius, right? It's just like it was a cultural thing.
I know that for some folk that's what it is. I have another friend in the military. Actually, we had him on the show. We had Max on, the lawyer, our lawyer friend, which he has the flu. Y'all pray for him. He got the flu, but he used to have that attitude, and then he started his own firm, and the consensus was, hey, like, bro, we going with iPhones, man. We ain't doing Android. And he wound up having to get an iPhone. And he wound up seeing, some stuff we talk about. But it was a cultural thing. He was like, iPhones are for sissies. That was kind of that was kind of his attitude.
We don't trash up the text thread. That's just Apple. That's why we need legislation. Break Apple up because they're excluding us Androids in the text thread.
That's right. Kevin get kicked out the chat with that daggone green bubble, man.
It's funny because I think so I'm an elder in my church, and I think I'm the only elder that doesn't have an iPhone.
Man, we need to work on that sanctification. We need to work on that sanctification, man. You causing disunity in the body of Christ.
Man, it's just like I don't like change, and I know how Androids operate. Is the reason I'm a PC and I don't have a MacBook. And when I right click, I want right click to do a certain thing because that's the way it's always been done, right? I don't like change. I don't like a new when I put my fingers on it and I do this, I want it to do a certain thing. Like I know how it works. Start over. I'm old.
Well, hey, we still love you. Even though you're a green bubble, we still love you, man. We still love you.
Hey, I appreciate it. All bubbles matter.
All bubbles. Green bubbles matter. GBM. Green bubbles matter. Oh man, now I have to be against it. Now I have to be against it. You left me no choice, Kevin. You left me no choice.
Wow, Matt over here firing pastors for not having iPhones. That's wild. That's wild.
I'm just saying, man. I'm pretty sure it's in the Bible somewhere. It's in there somewhere.
The apple's in there. We know it ain't good. It's not good.
Dang it. Oh man. I left myself wide open for that one, man.
Oh yes, you did.
Oh
yes,
man.
You did.
Oh man.
Oh
yeah. It was the fruit.
Man,
it was the fruit.
Yep. So we are at 2 hours, and we had a second story that we were going to get to, and I don't think we could dive into it because it takes. I think it deserves more attention than a flyby, right?
Yeah, it's deep.
It's a very, very interesting video and a very interesting topic that I think we can dive into really, really good.
And I think actually some of the things that you and I were talking about are just wanting to address how and why Black people vote the way that they do, and how that's kind of can be tied to Black identity. I think we can dive into that as a part of that. So that really honestly deserves its own episode. I mean,
yeah. Okay. Yeah. Push, and hopefully nothing big happens this week to where we have to push it back again. But so for right now, we'll say that for next week. That being, man, we've never spent this much time on one topic, but I felt this was deserved given the nature of it. Because, I mean, when it comes to like tariffs and stuff, like I said, when people leave our episode, I want them to feel informed. No, this is informed takes, and not just us giving our hot takes on it, but just really informed from the information that's provided. And I felt like a lot of people don't really understand what's going on with this tariff stuff. It's a lot of talk out there. And so that's why I added all of those, those videos and that content, because I wanted people to have a broad perspective of, number one, different opinions, but also just have a broad understanding of what is the real issue here? What are we really talking about? And so I feel like that was achieved here tonight. If you listen to this episode, you're going to walk away saying, okay, I understand this tariff thing much better now, and now you can have an informed take on it. You can have an informed opinion on it. Right. And so yeah, I think it was worth doing the full 2 hours on just that one story.
Yeah, it's affecting people. It's affecting everybody. If it ain't hit you yet, it will. Unfortunately.
Yeah, absolutely. Future.
This rate, you're about to start having Wednesday night services.
Look, I would love to do informed takes more than once a week. I just can't. With everything else I got going on in my life, if one day we become full-time content creators, man, you're going to get informed takes every day. We're going to be like Ben Shapiro show. Yeah. But no, right now, no Wednesday night services. My wife would not be for that. I do enough content as there is right now. So one day we're going to be informed takes every day. But with that being said, I cut out the section tonight because I knew we were going to have a lot to talk about, but we still got our book of the week section going on this week. Boom. So a couple of weeks ago, in a book on our show, and it got me thinking about this whole segment. So I was like, this week, why not make that book the book of the week for the segment? Because we really didn't talk about it. So do you want to tell the people kind of what this book is about?
Oh, I'd love to.
And why they need to read it?
This book is it's a fantastic book. It's by Chris Voss. He was the top hostage negotiator for the FBI. And it's very interesting because he didn't come through the normal pathway to becoming an FBI hostage negotiator. He was a New York City beat cop. And he wanted to become a hostage negotiator. And he kind of went a non-orthodox path to get there. And they rejected him at first, but they were like, hey, go work on the suicide hotline and then come back and talk to me. Well, he wound up doing really well on that, and he wound up going back and becoming an FBI hostage negotiator, wound up becoming the top hostage negotiator. And even now, business people hire him to come and teach their people.
Yes, that's how I heard about the book. Yes.
Yeah, same here. And one of my mentors actually told me that I needed to read it. And I've read this book probably 3 going on 4 times now. I think I'm on my 4th time reading it. My mentor says, like, Devin, you need to read this book at least once a year. And the whole premise is that you need to negotiate like everything depends on it. Like you need to negotiate understanding you have to find a way to build an inroad with the human on the other side of the table from you. You can't just go in being completely academic. You have to understand the emotional factors. You have to understand everything that's motivating that person to do what they do, to be the way that they are. And he has tons of stories in this book about how he negotiated with international terrorists, with criminals who cared nothing about human life, and he understood what made them tick, and that's how he was able to get those deals to where he saved a ton of lives by the principles that he's teaching in this book. So if you are really, I would recommend it for everybody, but especially if you are in business. If you got a job, you need to read this book because it's going to help you negotiate for your salary a whole lot better. I can promise you that. If you trying to buy a car, it will teach you how to negotiate on how to buy that car. Like, no joke, he has a story about how he negotiated for a Toyota 4Runner, which was one of my favorite cars of all time. It is a fantastic vehicle. And he talks about how he negotiated for a 4Runner, and I was just sitting there just pounding my chest like, my man, that was amazing. So I highly recommend
Devin, it. You're so practical. A Toyota 4, so practical. Like, man, what's your dream car? Toyota 4Runner, man.
Man, I have to say, if I had the money to just buy whatever car I wanted, no lie, I would have some exotic stuff. I'm a Porsche guy. I want a Porsche. I have an old Jag that I'm trying to fix up that's just sitting in the garage right now. But please understand that there probably would be an absolutely decked out Toyota 4Runner still in the repertoire, because when stuff goes sideways, please understand there's nothing else I would rather have than a Toyota 4Runner and something with a 30-round magazine.
Oh man, absolutely. Oh man, so I mean, I appreciate you explaining that book. Like in the business world, in the real estate world, man, this book is like, everybody needs to read this book. And so you guys, so go out, check it out, pick it up, and enjoy it. Oh man, Devin, man, this show's been good. It has been really, really good. I came into the night tired and was like, man, I don't know, Devin got to carry the show, man. I'm tired, but but things went really well, man. So I appreciate you. And I appreciate all you guys. Thank you guys so much for joining us tonight. We appreciate all y'all guys' support. You can support the channel by liking, subscribing, share it, tell a friend. Also, check out Devin over at Podium Studios. Check out the merch store. And join us again next week as we tackle the latest in foreign and domestic politics. But until then, stay informed.
Stay informed, ladies and gentlemen. And like my man said, don't forget to check out that merch store, man. We got all kinds of good stuff, new merch. You need to see it. You need to buy it. We thank y'all so much. We'll catch you next week. This podcast was filmed at Podium Studios at Marietta Square. Grow your business with turnkey, professional quality podcasting, live streaming, and online events. Don't worry about editing. Don't worry about anything. Just come in and record. Learn more at thepodium.studio. Step up to the podium.